Audrey's eyes flitted across the room as she took in the weight of her current situation. The argument had escalated quickly, words thrown like stones, each one heavier than the last. "Why should you think less of me just because I choose to be a homemaker?" she thought. Audrey, at 27, had always been proud of her choice. She remembered the dreams she'd once harbored of a peaceful life when she married Daniel. Daniel was 3 years her senior, an age gap that had originally seemed to offer a comforting dynamic. He exuded a calm, mature demeanor, reminiscent of a seasoned man well beyond his 30 years. His frequent mentions of his mother had given Audrey the impression of a family man, someone rooted deeply in his familial bonds. When they exchanged their vows, Daniel's mother had been nothing short of endearing. The warm smile that graced her face made Audrey believe that they were embarking on a beautiful journey. The proposal to live with her mother-in-law had seemed logical then. With Daniel's father having passed away, he had wanted to remain close to his mother. Trusting her judgment and hoping for a harmonious family life, Audrey had agreed. Yet reality sometimes contrasts starkly with expectations. The truth of her husband's nature began to unfold, much to Audrey's dismay. It was far from the fairy tale she had imagined. The present moment, with tension thick in the air, had Audrey reconsidering her decisions. "I wanted a home, a loving environment," she thought, "not this hostility." As the two continued their disagreement, Audrey hoped they could find common ground and that the love she once felt would help mend the rifts that had formed. The early days of marriage are often imagined as a honeymoon period, filled with love and understanding. But for Audrey, it felt like stepping into a different realm altogether. As the days rolled by, the behavior of her mother-in-law and even her husband, Daniel, shifted dramatically. "Could you get the tea, Audrey? And don't forget to scrub the bathroom." Her mother-in-law's voice would ring out, the sharpness in her tone taking Audrey by surprise. Each request felt more like a command, the warmth she felt before their marriage now notably absent. Audrey couldn't help but ponder, was it age that made her act this way? Or perhaps she just enjoyed exerting control. While Audrey tried to make sense of the dynamics in her new home, a bigger shock awaited her. One morning, as she ventured into the kitchen, an unfamiliar face greeted her. Startled, Audrey tried to place him. Who was this man in their home? Sensing her confusion, he offered, "Hey, I'm Jason, Daniel's younger brother." Jason, her brother-in-law, was a revelation. No one had ever mentioned his existence or the fact that he lived in the same house. With this revelation, Audrey was flung further into the whirlpool of surprises. He was her age 27, and yet she'd never heard of him. When she approached her mother-in-law about Jason, the response was even more perplexing. "Oh, that's just Jason. Think of him like a phantom in the house, rarely seen, always quiet." Her words were dismissive, almost derogatory. "Only Daniel matters to me. Jason, he's a recluse, only stepping out for the occasional errand." Audrey was taken aback. How could a mother speak of her own son that way? The dramatic change in her mother-in-law's behavior since the wedding left Audrey feeling both bewildered and betrayed. The home she had entered with dreams of love and unity now felt like a maze of secrets and unexpected turns. The disparity in the treatment of her brother-in-law Jason weighed heavily on Audrey's heart. Being an only child, she had never experienced sibling dynamics, and the thought of her parents ever dismissing her in such a manner was unfathomable. With her parents having passed on, she often found herself longing for their warmth, envious of families that remained intact. Every child deserves love and understanding from their parents, she believed. Seeking clarity, Audrey decided to broach the topic with Daniel when he returned from work. She hoped that perhaps between brothers there might be an unspoken bond. Yet Daniel's response was chillingly indifferent. "Ignore him, act as if he's invisible," he suggested, brushing off the topic. Audrey's heart sank further. It wasn't just an oversight. Referring to his own brother as an heirloom was heart-wrenching. Any notion she had of Daniel cherishing family memories seemed to fade. To her, he appeared simply as a puppet to his mother's whims. With her mind burdened with the day's revelations, Audrey headed upstairs. By chance, she encountered Jason, who was stepping out of his room. Their exchange was brief but startling. "You're the one who married my brother, aren't you?" Jason began. She nodded cautiously, sensing the weight behind his words. "I don't mean to intrude," he continued, "but for your own good, consider leaving this place." His suggestion of divorce was jarring, and while it left her taken aback, it further emphasized the depth of dysfunction in the family. Amidst all the changes and shocking revelations, Audrey found herself grappling with a disorienting blend of emotions. The family she had married into was not at all what it had seemed on the surface. Marrying someone is a testament to profound love and commitment. So when Jason suggested that Audrey end her marriage barely a day into it, she was taken aback. "This is my decision and my relationship," she thought, her resilient spirit shining through. "I've always risen to challenges. This won't be any different." Jason, sensing her determination, quickly apologized. "I shouldn't have said that," he admitted, genuine regret evident in his demeanor. Although Audrey had initially been inclined to view Jason as unstable, his sincere apology made her question that judgment. Perhaps, she thought, his intentions were pure, rooted in concern rather than malice. Pondering the enigma that was Jason, she realized that while her husband and mother-in-law painted him as a reclusive oddball, her brief interactions hinted at a different person entirely. He appeared considerate, the kind of individual who deserved respect and understanding, much contrary to the image portrayed by the family. The following morning, as Audrey prepared breakfast, Jason appeared. Her instinct to build bridges nudged her to invite him to share the meal. "Morning, Jason. Care to join us for breakfast?" she offered warmly. He hesitated, a brief flash of gratitude in his eyes before saying, "Thank you, Audrey." Yet, as he glanced towards his mother, the atmosphere grew cold. "Audrey, I will not have him sit at the table. Just focus on the breakfast," his mother snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. Saddened by the animosity but refusing to let it dampen her spirit, Audrey watched as Jason retreated, thinking, in time, perhaps we can mend these broken ties. The weight of the previous day's tensions still lingered, and I had hoped for an opportunity to apologize for my outburst. However, before I could, my mother-in-law curtly said, "Stick to your chores and avoid unnecessary actions." I was taken aback. Even if she wasn't particularly fond of her new daughter-in-law, I hadn't expected such direct hostility. As if echoing his mother's sentiments, Daniel's demeanor had shifted dramatically. When he saw the curry I had prepared for dinner, he exclaimed, "Curry again? You should have informed me. I had it for lunch." I wondered how I was supposed to anticipate that. Why didn't he just inform me earlier? Instead of defending myself, I swallowed my protests, only for him to berate me further. "You don't even apologize. Understand your role here." I was floored. It was clear. Daniel didn't see a wife in me, he saw a housemaid. Their coldness was palpable. They wanted a life of comfort, and I was just a tool to facilitate that. I felt isolated, used, and unloved. A pang of hurt shot through me when I saw them, moments later, laughing and chatting comfortably in the living room, as if I was an inconsequential part of their lives. Overwhelmed, I retreated upstairs, where I finally allowed my tears to flow. Out of the blue, a comforting hand extended a handkerchief towards me. "I still believe you should leave." The voice was unmistakable. The only one who seemed to understand, the only one who seemed to care, Jason. When I raised my eyes, they met Jason's concerned gaze. My voice trembled as I spoke. "I'm so sorry for all of this," hastily wiping away my tears with the handkerchief he had offered. "Don't apologize," he replied gently. "I wanted you to have it. I've heard how they've been treating you. It's unforgivable." His words intrigued me, hinting at something deeper. Prodded by my curiosity, I ventured to ask what he meant, even though I had an inkling. Jason revealed a shocking tale of a past fiancée of Daniel's, a woman who faced similar treatment from my husband and mother-in-law. She had fled, choosing to escape the torment just before her wedding day. Hearing this story, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Part relief, knowing that their treatment wasn't exclusive to me, but mostly despair. Their affections, their sweet words before our marriage, it was all a facade to trap me. My heart ached at the realization of how duped I felt. And yet, where could I go? As a housewife, I was financially tethered to them. My attempts to find employment had been thwarted at every turn by them. Moving out seemed impossible, both practically and financially. Seeing my evident distress, Jason whispered, "We shouldn't linger here too long. It might raise suspicions." He quickly scribbled down his line ID on a piece of paper, handing it over. "If you need to talk, message me. Maybe we can meet at the coffee shop next time." I nodded, clutching the paper tightly, and retreated to the sanctuary of my bedroom, feeling a glimmer of hope in an otherwise desolate situation. With newfound determination, I planned my exit. "It's time to break free from this suffocating environment," I murmured to myself. Prior to stepping out, I informed my mother-in-law of my plans, only to be met with her usual threats about unfinished tasks. To which I proudly declared that everything was already taken care of, causing her to warn me about being late for dinner. I feigned agreement and proceeded with my actual agenda. At the coffee shop, Jason waited patiently. Pouring out my heart, I explained my situation. No parents to lean on, a canceled rental, and no job. The feeling of starting from scratch was both daunting and liberating. Acknowledging the weight of my predicament, he mused, the most pressing issue seems to be employment. Being at their beck and call every minute of the day must feel like a prison. As I mulled over his words, he threw a curveball. Audrey, can you draw? Bewildered, I responded, I mean, I attended art school, but Jason's face lit up. Perfect. I know a manga artist in desperate need of an assistant, and it's a remote position. My heart raced at the opportunity, but the reality of my current situation quickly dimmed my excitement. That sounds wonderful, but I could own a computer. He didn't miss a beat. You can borrow mine. I have a spare. Gratefully puzzled, I asked, why do you have an extra computer? What exactly do you do? Jason leaned in, a sly smile playing on his lips, preparing to reveal another layer of his enigmatic life. Jason chuckled, you seem surprised. Did you peg me as just a recluse? I shook my head, not at all. In fact, you come across as quite refined, always choosing your words carefully and maintaining an immaculate appearance. You work from your home, don't you? Smiling, Jason responded, indeed I do. I was once part of a firm, but now I've ventured out on my own. Wow, I had no idea you were running your own business, an entrepreneur. Jason nodded, yes, I find it more conducive to manage everything myself. Plus, I have a team, including web designers. We're a small group, so remote work suits us best. That probably explains why I'm home most of the time. Confused, I remarked, but your mother and Daniel painted a very different picture, suggesting you're just idly spending your days at home. Didn't you think of clarifying things? He shrugged, I never felt the need to. Their perceptions don't shape my reality. That makes sense. But if you're so accomplished, why stay in that house? Jason hesitated for a moment. It's not as straightforward as it seems. But enough about me. Let's get you introduced to that manga artist. Without missing a beat, Jason initiated a call. Within minutes, a virtual interview was set up. I had my shot. With my mother-in-law's classes on Wednesday, followed by her customary outings, I could seize this opportunity for the interview. The winds of change seemed to be blowing in my favor. My temper flared. Support doesn't mean being a doormat. And just because I'm your wife doesn't mean I don't deserve respect and consideration. He scoffed, staggering slightly. Oh, suddenly the little housemate has opinions. Since when? Since always, Daniel, but I've been quiet, thinking maybe this new marriage, new home, and the initial adjustments were hard on you. I tried to be understanding, to be patient, but I cannot be silent about your unjust behavior anymore. Jason, having heard the commotion, appeared in the doorway. Is everything okay here? He asked, looking concerned. Daniel sneered, mind your own business. Ignoring him, Jason turned to me. Audrey, do you want to stay here tonight? You can use my room if you don't feel safe. Taken aback by Jason's offer and my husband's indifference, I nodded. Thank you, Jason. Daniel snorted. So that's how it is. Fine, go walk with my useless brother. As Jason and I walked to his room, he whispered, you deserve better, Audrey. I'm beginning to see that, I replied, appreciating not only the new job and home, but also the unexpected friendship I had found in Jason. Seeing the defiance and hurt in my eyes, my husband scoffed, I knew you'd give up easily. But I stood my ground, voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. I'm not giving up, Daniel. I'm choosing to save myself from this toxic environment. You and your mother have made your opinions very clear. But here's what I know. My worth isn't defined by my housework or by the harsh words you choose to throw at me. My mother-in-law smirked. Good riddance. We don't need someone like you here. I'd pity the next woman you bring into this home, I retorted. She'll only be met with the same scorn and abuse. Jason, who had been watching silently, stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Audrey, you're strong and you deserve so much better than this. Looking between my now ex-husband and Jason, I felt the sharp contrast in the way I was treated by the two brothers. One saw me as disposable, while the other saw my value. Taking a deep breath, I held my head high. Goodbye, Daniel. I hope one day you realize the error of your ways. Walking away from that house was painful, but it was the beginning of a journey to reclaim my self-worth and build a life on my own terms. With each box we packed, a weight seemed to lift off our shoulders. It was as though with every piece of our past we put away, we were creating space for a brighter future. Despite the cutting remarks from my now ex-husband and his mother, Jason and I leaned on each other for strength. It was evident that their venomous words were merely a reflection of their own insecurities and unhappiness. Outside, the moving truck was getting filled up. I took one last look at the place that had been my home. While it was filled with memories of heartache and belittlement, it was also the place where I found an unexpected ally in Jason. Ready to leave this behind? Jason asked, coming up beside me. I nodded, more than ready. As we pulled away from the house, Jason turned to me with a determined look in his eyes. You know, we're not just leaving a house. We're leaving behind negativity and toxicity, and stepping into a world where we choose who we want to be without anyone dictating it for us. His words struck a chord, and I felt a new sense of empowerment. Our combined resources and strengths would surely pave the way for better opportunities. We had each other, and that was more than enough to start fresh. In that moment, I realized that sometimes life's challenges were merely stepping stones to something greater, and true family wasn't necessarily defined by blood, but by the bonds of understanding and support. The incessant ringing of my phone grew more and more irritating. Glancing at the screen, I sighed, recognizing the familiar number of my former mother-in-law. What now? I muttered to myself. Reluctantly, I answered the call. Yes. Give back the alimony. How dare you take it? Her voice was shrill and filled with outrage. It's a justified amount. Jason has evidence of the way you both treated me, and it's been approved legally. I'd advise you to speak with a lawyer if you have any grievances. She spluttered, trying to find words to respond. You trapped us. You planned this. The idea that I had manipulated the situation amused me. If anyone is to blame for this outcome, it's the two of you. Maybe it's time you reflected on your behavior. There was a pause before she bitterly spat out, "You'll pay for this." I ended the call, shaking my head. This was far from the closure I had hoped for, but it was clear to me that my decision to leave was the right one. Their continued animosity only solidified that I was better off without them in my life. Jason, seeing my agitated state, gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Remember, we're in this together, and it's about us moving forward, not looking back. I nodded, taking a deep breath. Revenge wasn't about pettiness. It was about reclaiming our lives and ensuring that their toxic behavior was recognized and addressed. I had a newfound appreciation for the sense of justice and security that Jason brought into my life, and together we were determined to build a future free from the shadows of the past. Upon answering, I recognized my mother-in-law's desperate tone. "Audrey, where are you hiding?" "Why do you need to know?" I replied coolly. "We're just concerned, especially about Jason. He's not answering his phone." I couldn't help but smirk. Perhaps he doesn't want to be found. Suddenly, the voice on the other end changed, my ex-husband now barking at me. "You think this is a game? You both vanish, and we're supposed to just accept it? You know where he is." The audacity of them assuming they had any right to know our whereabouts was astonishing. "It's none of your business," I retorted. "And for the record, I'm doing quite well. I have a job, a new home, and peace, something I never had with you." His voice wavered, a mix of anger and disbelief. "You can't possibly have sorted out everything so quickly." "I guess you don't know me as well as you thought," I replied, my voice dripping with satisfaction. The conversation was becoming exhausting. "Look, I don't know either of you any explanations. But know this, if you continue to harass me or show up uninvited, I won't hesitate to get the authorities involved." As he began to protest, I cut him off and ended the call. Feeling a surge of liberation, I blocked both their numbers. They were a part of my past, one I had no intention of revisiting, and the fact that Jason had been financially supporting his mother without their knowledge. That was just the cherry on top of the realization they'd been wrong about both of us all along. While everyone had believed Jason to be reclusive and jobless, the truth was far from it. The misconception that the inheritance from my father-in-law was automatically divided by the bank had led them astray. When the time came for the usual monthly transfer, and there was none, the reality began to dawn on them. The money had always been from Jason. Their belated realization was both tragic and fitting. Jason, seeing their true colors, had severed ties and ceased all financial aid. My ex-husband, already struggling financially, was now burdened with the alimony. My ex-mother-in-law, who had grown accustomed to the monthly funds, was in for a rude awakening with their sudden stoppage. Frankly, given their past actions, any sympathy I might have felt was hard to find. Yet Jason's story was one of deep-rooted loyalty and a son's love. Now comfortably settled in a lavish apartment in Tokyo, one would wonder why he chose to live in the shadow of his family for so long. The reason was a solemn promise he had made to his late father, a man who cherished him, contrasting the indifference he received from his mother and brother. Despite the hardships he faced at their hands, Jason had committed to supporting them financially. His father's plea, "No matter your feelings towards your mother and brother, they are still my family. I ask that you look after them once I'm gone," had kept him tethered, honoring a bond that went beyond blood. Unbeknownst to them, they had cast aside a gem in Jason, berating him without understanding his true character. It was truly their loss. After we moved, I saw Jason occasionally, and he shared his promise with his father. I respect his decision and hope he finds peace and closure. Despite the tumultuous journey and feeling disillusioned by deceit, I found solace and support in Jason. He has become a pivotal figure in my life, and I can only wish him boundless happiness. A year later, in a surprising twist, Jason proposed, but that is a tale for another time. It's disheartening to witness someone's character transform so drastically after marriage. Isn't that akin to betrayal? Fortunately, in my brother-in-law Jason, I found reliability and trust. In the end, I married Jason. We faced numerous challenges but came out triumphant. With all that has transpired, I feel content knowing happiness is now within my grasp.